The alarm tore through the dawn like a siren in a nightmare, jolting the prison awake. Officers sprinted toward the women's wing, their radios spitting fragments of panic. Smoke bled from the laundry room vents, curling into the cold morning air. When the door finally gave way, the heat slapped them first, then the sight. A woman lay crumpled on the tiles, her skin ghost pale beneath the soot, a damp blanket clinging to her as if holding on for both of them. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the soft hiss of water dripping from scorched pipes, and the quiet, terrible truth settling in: this was no accident. This is true crime's altar, where every sin is punished, every betrayal has a cost, and every soul must answer to the truth. Like, comment, and subscribe, because these are the stories the guilty prayed would stay buried. 3 weeks earlier, the same laundry room hummed with fluorescent light and the low thump of industrial dryers. The air was warm, heavy with detergent. Officer Darnell Rivers leaned against the doorway, watching inmate Latrice Monroe fold sheets with lazy precision, her dark hair pulled tight, her smile quick and knowing. She glanced up at him and didn't look away. "You gonna stand there, or you gonna make yourself useful?" she teased. He smirked, stepping inside, pretending to straighten a crooked stack of towels. It was harmless, he told himself. Just conversation. Just passing time on a slow night. But in prison, even harmless things have teeth. Darnell was 24, 2 years into the job, still carrying the kind of restless energy that didn't fit behind bars. He'd grown up in Macon, raised by a grandmother who taught him to work hard, keep his head down, and never get too close to trouble. But Latrice wasn't trouble in the usual way. She had a way of speaking like every word had a secret inside it, and he found himself listening too closely. Sergeant Warren Price noticed it too. He was in his late 40s, a tall man with a tired face and eyes that missed nothing. Walking past the laundry room, Warren's gaze lingered on Darnell a moment too long. Later, in the break room, he said quietly, "Don't let these women play you, kid. They're doing time, and they'll make you do it with them if you let them." Darnell laughed it off, but he felt the warning stick under his skin. Latrice had been inside for nearly a decade. Armed robbery. No parole for another 7 years. In here, survival was a kind of currency, and she was rich. She had favors from certain guards, better assignments than most, and a small circle of inmates who respected her. She also had Warren's attention, though no one said it out loud. But Darnell noticed the way she got moved off work detail early, the way her cell never got searched too hard. One night during his rounds, Darnell stopped outside her cell. She was lying on her bunk, reading by the dim yellow light. "Can't sleep?" she asked without looking up. "Maybe I just like the view," he said before he could stop himself. Her laugh was low, almost a hum. That night, he dreamed about her. The next day, he found himself walking past her more often than he needed to, just to see if she'd smile. Temptation doesn't announce itself. It slips in quietly and makes a home in your thoughts. Warren caught him lingering again a week later. "Rivers," he said sharply, "you don't want to go down that road." Darnell's jaw tightened. "I know the rules." "Knowing them ain't the same as keeping them," Warren replied before walking away. It was the first time Darnell felt the older man wasn't just giving a general warning. He was staking a claim. Pride is a fragile thing, and it shatters louder than glass. That evening in the yard, Latrice passed Darnell a folded scrap of paper as she walked by, quick and discreet. His pulse kicked. Inside was a single line: laundry room. Friday night. He told himself it was curiosity that made him show up. Curiosity is just desire wearing a disguise. Friday came. The laundry room smelled of bleach, the hum of machines masking the sound of their voices. "You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't here?" he asked. "Every day," she said softly. "But I don't get out." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the faint sweetness of her soap. He didn't move away. A man can stand on the edge of a cliff for only so long before the ground starts to crumble beneath him. They spoke in whispers until the shift ended, small confessions traded like contraband. When he left, he carried the sound of her voice with him, the way it softened when she said his name. And in that softness, he began to believe she was his. But love built on possession rots before it blooms. Darnell told himself to keep his distance, but distance is hard to measure when it's only a few steps down a hallway. Each night he found an excuse to pass through the laundry room or linger by the women's wing just long enough to hear her voice. Latrice made it easy. Sometimes she'd greet him with a quick smile, other times with a look that lingered a beat too long. One afternoon she caught him watching her through the glass of the control room. She didn't look away. She simply tilted her head, a silent acknowledgement that she knew exactly what he was doing. In that moment, he felt seen in a way that was dangerous. Attention from the wrong source is a spark in a room soaked with fuel. A week later, she asked him for something small, a real pen, not the flimsy safety pens they handed out. Just for writing letters, she said. He hesitated, knowing the rule was clear. But her eyes didn't blink, and the silence between them grew heavy until he slid it to her on his next shift. When boundaries fall, they never fall quietly. They collapse like a dam, flooding everything. The pen became cigarettes, the cigarettes became snacks, and the snacks became notes folded small enough to hide in the palm of her hand. Darnell told himself it was harmless, that no one was getting hurt, but the truth was he liked the secrecy. He liked that she came to him instead of anyone else. Secrets have a sweetness that turns bitter in the mouth. Warren noticed the change. He found Darnell in the staff locker room and said, "I'm telling you again, watch yourself." Darnell bristled. "You got a problem with how I do my job?" Warren's eyes narrowed, and for a long moment they just stared at each other. "Just remember," Warren said finally, "you ain't the first guard to fall for her. And she's still in here, ain't she?" It was a warning wrapped in history, but Darnell heard only the challenge. Pride will blind a man faster than love ever could. That night, Latrice whispered to him that she could make the time pass quicker for both of them if they were careful. She leaned in close, her lips almost touching his ear as she spoke. His pulse thundered in his chest. He knew this was the line. Once crossed, there was no going back. But temptation doesn't knock politely, it kicks the door wide open. The first time they kissed, it was in the laundry room after lights out, the hum of machines muffling the sound of their breath. It was quick, almost tentative, but it left him reeling. He thought of it the whole night, the warmth of her hand on his arm, the way she looked at him like he was her only way out. But lust wears the mask of love until the mask starts to crack. Soon the favors grew bolder. Extra time in the yard, unsearched laundry bags, a phone card slipped into her property. Each request came with a promise that she'd make it worth his while, and each promise drew him deeper into something he couldn't undo. A man who trades his oath for affection trades more than he can afford to lose. Warren confronted him again in the hallway, his voice low and hard. "You think she's yours? She's not yours. She's just using you." Darnell stepped in close. "You sound jealous, Sergeant." Warren's jaw tightened. "Careful, boy. You don't want me as your enemy." The air between them was thick with something unspoken, and in that moment Darnell realized Warren's connection to her wasn't just rumor. Jealousy is a poison that tastes like truth to the one who drinks it. Latrice, sensing the tension between them, began playing the two men against each other in subtle ways. A comment to Warren about Darnell's attention, a remark to Darnell about Warren's special favors. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she enjoyed the way it made them circle each other like wary predators. When a heart is used as a weapon, it cuts deeper than any blade. The more Darnell gave, the more Latrice seemed to want. It wasn't just about the cigarettes or the phone cards anymore. Now she wanted information. Which officers were working, which shifts, who was on leave, where the cameras were weakest. He told himself it was harmless, that she just wanted to know how to avoid trouble. But he knew better. Knowledge in prison is more dangerous than contraband, and giving it away is selling pieces of yourself. One evening, she caught him off guard by asking about Warren directly. "Why is he always watching me like that?" she said, feigning innocence. Darnell's gut tightened. "Maybe he's just keeping an eye on you." She tilted her head, smirking. "Or maybe he's jealous you got what he wants." Her words hooked deep, pulling at the knot of pride and suspicion inside him. And once suspicion takes root, it grows in the dark, feeding on every silence. The next day, Darnell intercepted a small package coming in through laundry, intended for Latrice but hidden in the seam of a blanket. Inside was a bottle of expensive lotion and a handwritten card signed with only a W. His hands clenched around the card, his mind flashing to Warren's steady, knowing eyes. He delivered the blanket without the card, saying nothing. But silence used to protect a man becomes the rope that strangles him. That night, he confronted Latrice in the laundry room. "You didn't tell me you were still talking to him," he said. She shrugged, folding towels as if his words meant nothing. "I talk to a lot of people in here. Doesn't mean anything." Her casual dismissal was a match on dry wood. He grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but enough to make her look at him. "Don't lie to me." She pulled her arm free slowly, deliberately. "You don't own me, Rivers. You never will." Control is a fragile illusion, and once shattered, it cuts the one who held it the tightest. Over the next week, Darnell's work slipped. Late reports, missed checks, unexplained absences from his post. He started spending more time in the blind spots of the prison just to catch a glimpse of her without Warren around. One night, he saw them talking near the staff entrance, Warren's hand brushing her arm before she walked away. The heat in Darnell's chest felt like it could set the air on fire. Jealousy whispers lies that sound like justice. He began keeping a notebook at home, writing down moments when Warren and Latrice were together, piecing together patterns that only he could see. In his mind, this wasn't obsession, it was proof. But proof gathered in anger is nothing more than a weapon waiting to be used. When Latrice missed one of their arranged meetings, he went looking for her and found her in the sergeant's office, laughing at something Warren said. The sight rooted him in the doorway, the laughter echoing like a dare. That night, he couldn't sleep. He replayed it over and over, imagining what she must have promised him. The mind that marinates in betrayal becomes drunk on vengeance. Days later, Latrice approached him during his shift, slipping a candy bar into his hand with a smile. "Don't be mad at me," she said, her voice almost tender. But he heard the game in it, the way she offered sweetness like bait on a hook. A gift given to distract from the truth is just another form of deceit. He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was already thinking of ways to end the game. And in that decision, a man trades the chance for redemption for the satisfaction of revenge. Darnell started thinking less about whether Latrice was lying to him and more about what he could do to make sure she couldn't lie again. The idea began as a flicker, a thought so faint he almost didn't recognize it as his own. But it grew quickly, fed by every smirk she gave Warren and every whispered word he wasn't meant to hear. When resentment becomes a habit, it stops asking for permission. He started checking maintenance logs, memorizing which doors stuck, which alarms were slow to trigger. He learned that the laundry room ventilation had been acting up for weeks, the fans weak and the heat lingering longer than it should. He didn't write up the repair request. A man who withholds safety invites danger into the room.
If you're enjoying this video, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. Share and like this video. It's free and won't cost anything, but it helps and encourages us to grow and do more. Thank you for your kindness, and back to the video.
One night, during his shift, he slipped into the laundry room alone, closing the door behind him. He stood there in the silence, smelling the faint mix of detergent and something metallic in the air, imagining how easy it would be for no one to hear her as she screamed. Thoughts like that don't leave. They dig in, waiting for the right moment. Warren caught him leaving the laundry room and asked what he was doing. Darnell lied easily, saying he was checking inventory. Warren's stare was long, cold, and full of unspoken suspicion. A lie told to protect a secret is the seed from which greater sins grow. That weekend, Darnell followed Latrice's movement closely, noting which hours she was assigned to laundry duty and which guards were stationed nearby. He knew exactly when the cameras would be on a rotation and when the hallway outside would be empty. Planning harm is a choice made in silence long before it's carried out in noise. In the break room, Warren cornered him again. "You're playing a dangerous game, Rivers." Darnell leaned in, his voice low. "I'm not playing." For a moment, Warren studied him, then shook his head and walked away. But turning your back on a man already sinking is the same as pushing him deeper. That night, Latrice asked him to bring her something, a small bottle of lighter fluid hidden in the lining of a laundry bag. For what? He asked. She smiled. Insurance. He didn't press her for details, just said he'd see what he could do. Giving someone the means to harm is the same as striking the match yourself. He didn't bring the lighter fluid, but the request lit something in him. Fire had always been a cleansing thing in his mind, the way his grandmother used to burn old trash in the backyard to start fresh. But the thought of using it here carried a different kind of heat. Over the next week, he avoided Warren entirely, keeping his focus on Latrice but speaking less to her, letting the silence hang heavy enough that she began to notice. She tried to reel him back in with small touches, sly smiles, and whispered apologies. But every apology felt rehearsed, and every word seemed dipped in poison. On a quiet Tuesday night, he stayed behind in the laundry room after his shift, turning off the cameras and locking the door. He stood there in the dim light, holding the heavy key in his palm, imagining the sound it would make if he turned it and walked away, leaving her inside. It was the clearest the thought had ever been, and in that moment the idea stopped being a possibility and became a plan. Darnell began timing his patrol so that his path crossed the laundry room exactly when Latrice was assigned there alone. He didn't speak much anymore, just watched her from the doorway, letting the silence press down like a weight. One night, she broke the quiet. "You mad at me or something?" He shrugged. "I just see things clearer now." Her brow furrowed, but she didn't press. Later that week, he overheard Warren telling another officer that Latrice wasn't looking well, that maybe she should be moved to lighter duty. The comment made Darnell's pulse spike. Was Warren protecting her or keeping her close? Protection offered for selfish reasons is just possession in disguise. That same night, Latrice slipped him another note, this one bolder, "Meet me Friday after last count." Laundry room. She underlined it twice. He kept the note, folding it so small it almost disappeared in his palm. An invitation given to the wrong heart is the same as a sentence passed. In the days leading up to Friday, he began stashing things in the laundry room. An old blanket, a spare lock, a lighter he'd confiscated from another inmate and never logged. On Thursday, Warren approached him in the hallway, his voice low but sharp. "You stay away from her tomorrow night." Darnell tilted his head. "Funny, you seem to know her schedule pretty well." Warren's jaw flexed. "I know trouble when I see it. But warnings don't work on a man who believes that danger is his destiny." That evening, Darnell caught sight of Latrice laughing with another inmate, her hand brushing the woman's arm. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. His jealousy was no longer just about Warren. It was about anyone who dared to have a piece of her. On Friday morning, he skipped his usual breakfast with the other officers and walked the halls alone, rehearsing the timing in his head. Which key to use first? How long before anyone noticed she was missing? When the fire alarm might sound? In the quiet, his plan felt almost calm, almost reasonable. That afternoon, Latrice caught his arm in the corridor, her tone playful, but her eyes searching. "You're coming tonight, right?" He nodded slowly. "Wouldn't miss it." As the shift change came and the sun began to fade beyond the razor wire, Darnell felt the world narrowing to a single room, a single door, and a single choice. The prison felt unnaturally still that night, the kind of quiet that makes every footstep sound like a confession. Darnell moved through the dim hallways with deliberate calm, the keys at his belt muffled by a folded rag. He'd already disabled the camera outside the laundry room 10 minutes earlier, knowing it would look like another in a long line of maintenance failures. Latrice was already inside, leaning against one of the dryers, her arms crossed, but her mouth curved in a faint smile. "Took you long enough?" she said. He stepped in and closed the door behind him, sliding the lock with a soft click. The sound was small, but it felt like sealing a vault. She moved toward him, her hand brushing his chest, but he stepped back. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and steady. "About you and Warren. About all of it." Her smile faltered, but only for a second. "You think you're the only one in here who matters to me?" she asked. "You're not." His hand tightened around the lighter in his pocket, his mind already replaying the dozens of moments he'd seen her with Warren, the scraps of conversation that had festered into certainties. He glanced at the door, then at the industrial shelves stacked with sheets and blankets. "You know, this place catches heat easy," he murmured. Her brows pulled together in confusion, then widened as realization hit. "Darnell, don't. Warnings don't stop a man who's already convinced the end will justify the means." He pulled the old blanket from the shelf, the one he'd stashed days before, and doused it from a small bottle he'd hidden in the corner. The air shifted immediately, sharp with chemical fumes. Her voice rose, sharp now, urgent. "Don't do this." But he struck the lighter, the tiny flame trembling in the stillness. There was a moment, half a breath, where he could have put it away, where the night could have ended with nothing but words. But a man who sees destruction as the answer has already closed the door on mercy. He dropped the flame to the edge of the blanket, and it bloomed instantly, fire racing up the fabric, heat licking the walls. Latrice screamed, rushing to the door, but he was already turning the lock from the inside, stepping past her toward the hallway. The roar of the fire began to swallow her voice, each shout growing smaller against the rising crackle. And in the space between her pounding fists and his retreating footsteps, something in him went cold. A man who walks away from the fire he started leaves part of himself in the ashes. He moved quickly, pocketing the lighter and wiping the sweat from his brow before stepping back into the main corridor as if nothing had happened. Behind him, the alarm began to wail, its shrill cry shattering the stillness. Fire eats quickly, but guilt will devour slower, bite by bite. He joined the rush of officers toward the smoke-filled room, blending into the chaos, his face set in practiced shock. And yet, no matter how convincing the performance, the eyes that watched from the flames would never close. The fire left the laundry room blackened and gutted, its walls peeling with soot and the air heavy with the scent of Latrice Monroe was pronounced dead at the scene, her body pulled from the corner where the heat had driven her. The official cause was listed as smoke inhalation, but the whispers that swept through the prison spoke of something darker. Investigators from the State Corrections Department arrived within hours, interviewing staff one by one. Darnell kept his answers clipped, controlled, claiming he'd been on another wing when the alarm sounded. But lies, no matter how steady the voice, carry the tremor of truth beneath them. Warren's interview took longer. His tone was defensive, his eyes hard. He admitted knowing Latrice, but denied any relationship beyond professional duty. The investigators noted the tension between him and Darnell, though neither man spoke the other's name directly. Concealment is just confession with a slower echo. Forensic teams discovered the malfunctioning ventilation system, the disabled camera, and the traces of accelerant on the burned blanket. These findings began to weave a pattern, and Darnell's name appeared at its center. When they pulled his time logs and found the gap that matched the moment before the fire, the question sharpened. Pressure has a way of turning denial into silence. Days later, an inmate quietly told investigators she'd seen Darnell leave the laundry room just before the smoke began to seep into the hall. Her statement was enough to bring him in for questioning under a different light. He kept his eyes down, refusing to speak without a lawyer. But in his stillness, the truth felt louder than any admission. Guilt, once rooted, grows even in the shadows. Warren was transferred to another facility during the investigation, the official reason labeled as operational reassignment. Inside the prison, Latrice's death left a hollow in the routines of those who knew her. A reminder that in a place where survival is currency, trust is the rarest coin. Eventually, Darnell was arrested, charged with arson and murder. In court, the evidence was laid bare, and the verdict came swift. He was sentenced to life, his uniform replaced by the same prison blues he once guarded. A man who lets rage steer his hand will always find himself in the cage he built for another. To everyone hearing this story, let it be a warning. Jealousy and vengeance are fires that do not stop burning once they're lit. If you find yourself in a situation where you feel betrayed, used, or pushed beyond your limits, do not let anger choose for you. Seek help from those in authority, supervisors, counselors, law enforcement, before you take a step that can never be undone. Love should protect, not destroy. And no one, no matter how deep the hurt, has the right to take another life. If you've watched until now, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment telling us your thoughts on this case and let us know where in the world you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to True Crimes Altar for more stories that dig into the human heart and the choices that change lives forever.